It's been almost a year since the Fearless Year of Shadow campaign has passed, and it's safe to say that it was a success. To Sonic X Shadow Generation selling 2.3 million copies in 3 months, to Sonic Movie 3 starring Shadow grossing $489 million on a worldwide box office, and not to mention Sonic X Shadow Generation's Dark Beginnings winning a Webby Award. But the biggest news of all is that the Shadow the Hedgehog title has been officially trademarked by Sega. And while a good amount of people were excited by this news, not everyone saw it the same way. Some fans are still asking, why Shadow? Why not the other characters that deserve the same spotlight? In today's video, I want to explain why Shadow's popularity isn't a threat to other characters, and why, in many ways, he's the key to giving them the spotlight that they deserve. So come on, take a seat, and let's get started. Throughout the 2000s, the Sonic games prided themselves on having a variety of playable characters. From Sonic Adventure 1 through Sonic 06, each game gave you the opportunity to play as Sonic's wide cast of friends, with Sonic Heroes still to this day holding the Guinness World Record for the most playable characters in a platformer. This variety on the surface not only helped fans get introduced to the other characters, but they also had different gameplay styles to toy around with. At the time, this was a cool thing for Sonic fans, but unfortunately, cracks started to show with this style of variety. The cast of characters, while stylistically amazing, didn't really stand out to the general public or to other Sonic fans. Many criticized them for not being as fun to play as Sonic. The criticism wasn't as loud throughout Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, but by the time that we got to Sonic Heroes, Shadow 05, and especially Sonic 06, the roster started to build a bad reputation around themselves. This was around the time the franchise got the coin term Sonic and his stupid friends put onto itself by the critics. Now, while this narrative was blown out of proportion, the criticisms of these games were loud enough that Sega pulled the plug on multiple playable characters, marking Sonic 06 as the last time we'd ever see another playable character. For the next 11 years, the Sonic franchise was relegated to only playing as Sonic. While this did bring some much needed focus back to the franchise, fans started to miss having other characters being represented within the mainline games. And when they did make a return within later Sonic games, not only weren't they playable, but they were used as background characters that added no purpose to the story or lack thereof. Sonic Forces was the first game to actually feature another playable character. That of course was Shadow the Hedgehog. Unfortunately, Shadow was only playable for 3 levels in a prequel DLC that probably lasted about 10 to 15 minutes of total playtime. Then it was right back to playing as Sonic and Classic Sonic. With Sonic Frontiers being released in 2022, Sega finally added multiple playable characters, that being Tails, Knuckles, and Amy within the Final Horizon DLC. But still, fans were eager for some other characters to hop back into the mix. This is why it was such a surprise to see an entire yearly campaign, an expansion game, and a third Sonic movie starring legendary actor Keanu Reeves being dedicated to Shadow the Hedgehog. Looking at the year of Shadow in hindsight, it's safe to say that it was one of the most important years in Sonic's history. For starters, Shadow was in a complete rut before 2024. His last meaningful appearance was in 2 games that nearly destroyed the public perception of the franchise, being caught within Sonic 06's disaster, and his solo spinoff turning his character into a complete laughingstock. While Shadow 05 wasn't really that horrible in retrospect, it did make a lot of people question Sega's execution of handling any non-Sonic character. So when they announced they would be running an entire campaign for the guy, with an expansion game tied to a Generations remaster, they really needed to lock back in for this one. But thankfully, they nailed it, as Sonic X Shadow Generations is one of the highest rated Sonic games of all time, with the Shadow portion garnering almost universal love from not just Sonic fans, but even the general audience that came from Sonic Movie 3. Shadow was finally respected as a character whose past was given the closure that it needed. The gameplay and level design were some of the best the Boost formula had to offer, and Shadow was given unique abilities with the Doom powers that added some much needed variety to the gameplay style. This game showed that Sega not only had more creativity left in the tank, but also showed that they finally understood how much this character means to us. Given the success of the game and the movie, it's no surprise that Sega would eventually trademark the title of Shadow the Hedgehog. This opens up the possibility for Sega to start projects using the Shadow the Hedgehog title, whether that be external media like manga, merch, or specifically hardware and video game related. For me personally, this is really exciting. I became a lot more of a Shadow fan over the past few years, and seeing him get his long overdue spotlight is a very good thing. And while some fans share the same excitement as me, others do have some opposing concerns. These concerns didn't appear out of nowhere though. These have been talking points as soon as the year of Shadow ended. This leads into the next open discussion I want to have, and that's regarding this quote-unquote year of for other characters. In an article written by The Gamer titled, "Sonic Fans Discuss Whether the Year of Shadow Was a Success," it talks about the general success of the campaign. Within this article, there was one section that stood out to me called, "Make Every Year the Year of Shadow." The article shows a few comments from fans saying, "Genuinely a well done year that properly celebrated the character," one user wrote in part. "With what we got, it's clear Shadow got a much needed revitalization of his character that hasn't been seen since 06. But the next section states, still, not every fan was happy-go-lucky, with one suggestion that the same level of effort should be put into the other characters of Sonic's world. Honestly, a year of X character, or maybe X team for less popular characters, would be a cool thing to do semi-regularly. Give other characters the spotlight instead of just Sonic, Tails, and sometimes Knuckles or Amy." Now here's my opinion about all this. I've seen a good amount of people say this same sentiment over the past few months. Honestly, maybe even the past couple of years. And I'm gonna be honest, I think we're missing a huge point here. The entire Year of Shadow campaign wasn't a deal of fan service to Shadow fans. It was a strategic marketing plan to revitalize Sonic's second most popular character. Sega knows we all want our favorite characters back in some meaningful way. I mean shit, I'm a diehard Blaze the Cat fan. I've been dying to see a meaningful appearance of her since 2007. But when it comes to this type of situation, given how stable the franchise is right now, Shadow's popularity isn't a threat to the other character's spotlight. He's the gateway for those characters to actually get their spotlight. Sega still has to make sure that not only Shadow can stand on his own two legs, but the general audience can buy into him, and in turn, the other characters. If it took a whole campaign, a movie, and an expansion game just to get Sonic's second most popular character back into the spotlight, then any other character like Silver or Blaze would need some serious legwork, smarter marketing, and most of all, patience. I know characters like Silver have recently been getting so much fan love thanks to Corrin's amazing art that exploded on Twitter, and a Project Silver fan game being in the works. But you gotta remember, Sega is a business here. I don't mean to pull the business perspective card, but fan sentiment alone is not going to equate to profitable sales for a Silver game, or a Blaze game, or an Amy or Knuckles game. Trust me, I'd love to see something done with any of these characters, as I know how much they mean to everyone. But if Sega isn't careful with how they roll them back into the general public, we could literally repeat the entire 2000s again. Catering to diehard Sonic fans is a financial risk. Sega isn't willing to take that risk unless they test the waters first with Shadow. Shadow's resurgence is the safest bet to get the general gaming community looking forward to the other characters. And like I said earlier, Shadow is long overdue for his set of products, games, shows, or whatever the hell Sega wants to do with them. If Shadow does well, then Sega can gain the flexibility to test out and gamble on the other characters. Yes, you can look at Mario's cast and ask yourself, why does Yoshi, Luigi, and Wario have their own set of games? It's because Nintendo earned that flexibility by creating a consistent set of Mario games that set the standards for the platforming genre. They can afford to gamble on other characters. Sonic, however, Sega never had that luxury, and when they tried it backfired miserably. Some fans don't even trust Sega to handle the next 3D Sonic title properly. So what does that say about giving the spotlight to the other characters like Silver or Blaze? Sega has to build the credibility first, and Shadow was the safe and most strategic choice. We can disregard the business side all we want to, but at the end of the day, Sonic is a product. That product needs to be handled with careful planning, trust, and execution. And right now, Shadow is the safest option to expand the roster beyond Sonic. I understand the frustration amongst the fanbase. I really do. Sega hasn't done these characters justice for almost 2 decades, whether we're talking about character models, character writing, or just pure character representation. It's been a struggle for a very long time, but in the case of Shadow's title getting trademarked, this is a win for those other characters. It's not surprising that Sega would use their second most popular character to open the floodgates for the rest of the roster. The same character they brought back from the dead in Sonic Heroes just because he's that popular. Of course I want to see the other characters too. In fact, I think it would help the franchise open up to newer fans who aren't familiar with the roster. But all of this takes time, especially with the next mainline game taking top priority within the franchise. Like I said over and over, patience is key, and trust needs to be earned from Sega in order to bring general excitement back to the other characters. We just got Sonic back up to speed, and Shadow is finally getting the love that he deserves. So for right now, let's just give it time and see what the future holds. But until then, this is Breck, and I'm signing off. God bless, and take care.